Elon Musk wants to create an internet where the most privileged people in society can punch down at marginalized groups. Queer people, people of color, women and gender minorities, and the Jewish community, without facing any consequences. In one of his first tweets as owner, he stated, "Comedy is now legal on Twitter." But the real comedy, in my opinion, is that after people started making parody accounts impersonating Elon, he banned them. What is the panel's position on Elon's policy changes on e-safety, and how should Australia and Australians respond?
Melissa, thank you. Kamila, what do you think?
I think we pay a lot of attention to what Elon Musk is doing because he's telling us things all the time. He'll tell us something one day and the next day he'll change his mind again. I'm far more concerned about the people who aren't telling us what they think. I mean, what Elon Musk has compared to, in terms of numbers, Twitter has, 350 million? Facebook has near 3 billion. Is that an okay space? And we get so focused on the individual, and we know about this one individual, so we think about what he's going to do, rather than thinking about the platforms and how they're working. Facebook is not a benign space. None of these are benign spaces, and none of them are existing for our good. I think what's going to happen with Twitter is he's going to try a lot of different things and see how people respond, see how his advertisers respond. And I think we're going to see, right now there are a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to leave, I'm about to leave. And this is going to be like all those Americans who said, if George Bush wins the election, I'm going to Canada. If George Bush wins the next election, I'm going to Canada. If Trump wins, I'm going to Canada. And all the Canadians are standing there saying, well, where are you? The fact is, we go on these social media platforms, we find things we enjoy, and we get comfortable. It goes back to the previous conversation. We get much too comfortable with, well, I'll just use it this way. I don't have to pay attention to that. There's all this other stuff going on. And I think we need to really step back and think about, we sort of landed into the world of the online world. I was at university when it was this great Wild West. And I don't think we have yet had the conversations with ourselves enough about what we are doing in terms of the very concept of privacy, which absolutely does not exist in the way it did.
You're on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter.
It sounds like you're going to stay on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. And I lie to myself all the time about them because,
What do you mean by that?
Because, well, I can be sitting in Sydney and having great conversations with many Pakistani cricket fans about the World Cup semi-final, and that feels great, and there's a sense of community, and you're getting information fast, and you really like the feeling of getting information fast and knowing what people are saying, and you enter this sort of siloed off world where, even though you're aware all this other stuff is going on, you are living, and I'm including myself in that. You're living in the siloed off world. I know what's being said about Muslims and migrants and other people, and it's nothing new. This isn't starting with Elon Musk. You think this has been a pleasant world on Twitter for marginalized communities until now?
No.
It's very honest take. Joe, let me come to you on this. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk and Twitter?
I don't like Elon Musk. I think he's a fruitcake.
Tell us what you really think. Stay on this, Joe.
He plays us from day one. He knew he wanted to become a U.S. citizen, but he knew that coming from South Africa, that was going to be harder. So he became a Canadian citizen first, and then he worked his way into America. You cannot, and this is the guy before him too, and all the others, you can't put someone in charge of a network that allows hundreds of millions of people to say or not say what they want to say, and you're in charge of moderating or what goes forward, what goes back. The day that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, he had 88 billion followers on Twitter, and he only had 74 million votes that day. He had more Twitter followers than he had votes. Now, I've been to Europe a number of times to see security conferences, and some very serious people used to wake up every morning and look at Brexit and Twitter to see what they were going to do for the rest of the day. I mean, people are able to control people with these kinds of things. The idea that we have these huge public spaces that are really unregulated by government. This is the Wild West, these places. Well, and I think we ought to do more about that.
Well, it's not really unregulated. Well, David, I promise I'll speak less at the tail end of this when I get out of my sort of zone. In fact, stop me later.
I wouldn't dare.
But you might recall I was the first e-safety commissioner.
You were. This was back in 2015?
Yeah, I think it was 2015, around that.
Social media was probably a little different back then.
Yeah, well, yes, but equally wasn't a pleasant place for women, for children, for still a very divisive place. Twitter and all of those other social media platforms have become a really important communications tool for all of us. They've gone beyond those companies now. You know, Twitter is the world's newsroom. It's the online newsroom, whether we like it or not. Australia moved the first legislation in the world to start pushing our values, our norms, onto our part of that internet, as is right and proper. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything on there. The unwinding of those staff in Twitter by Elon Musk and the sacking of staff, or the announcement by Meta today that they were getting rid of thousands of people.
We should just clarify. So Twitter looks like they've sacked about half their staff, and a lot of that is people who do the content moderation. A lot of people are those trust and safety people, the people that are actually there doing the horrendous job of sifting through the sewerage of the internet, trying to keep us marginally safe. People that would have to respond to the new e-safety commissioner, Julia McGrath, not that new, she's been there for years. Yeah, she's been a while. Does a great job. Who's she going to write to now to enforce Australian law and Australian standards on our part of the internet? That's a dangerous place to be. The last thing I'd say is this. These social media platforms become the vehicle for disinformation and misinformation, which pick at the very fabric of our society, our democracy, and we've seen the effect it's had. January 6, you know, the riots at the Capitol, that was largely driven online. And until you realise that free speech doesn't mean the ability to harm people, you know, you have a contra view, that's fine. Anyway, Anne, sorry.
I just want to bring in here the issue of youth and the content, because you know, maybe we do choose what we watch, but a lot of people don't, and that's because of the algorithms. And in fact, I want to look at, just mention some research that was done by Reset Australia, which showed that 41% of 16 and 17-year-olds were exposed to content that underlines the incel discourse, and that could lead, according to Reset, that could lead to a violent act. And in fact, the Reset research shows that some of these young people are getting this content more often than they're having Sunday dinners, right? And this is through the algorithms. This is something that should worry everybody, that young people, and they're getting younger and younger, through the algorithms that are set through these social media platforms, are viewing and are being exposed to disinformation, misinformation, yes, but white supremacist content from homegrown domestic white supremacist content, anti-Semitic content, far-right content, and incel content. And particularly, young white men are being exposed to this content.
And you're talking what sort of age again? This was
16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that everyone who sees this content is going to, you know, automatically be radicalised. No, the radicalisation process is much more complex than that. But what we do know about why people leave extremist movements behind is because they get exposed to something that plants a seed of doubt and makes them question their beliefs. Now, if the algorithms keep feeding you and feeding you and feeding you the same content,
echo chamber,
you're never going to get that. They're never going to get that exposure to the things that challenge that content.
Dan Tehan, just coming back to Melissa's question though about the arrival of Elon Musk at Twitter, what do you think? Are you going to stick around?
Well, Twitter's a gutter. It's a gutter. So my advice would be, if you don't like it, get out of it. And
are you still on there?
I am still on it, David. I am. But hear me out. I'm on it because you know what I use it for?
What?
There are people in that gutter who have a crack at me the whole time in the most vile way, right? And they do it to Lee Sales, and Lee Sales has said it's the extreme left that does it to her, right? What I do is I poke the bear every now and again. I just say...
Why?
Why? Because
Why?
I mean, it's a gutter. It's a gutter. You've got to admit what it is. Well, get out of the gutter.
I got out of it. I got out of it a long time ago.
Well done.
I'll call it a festering cesspool.
I didn't go on it for. I sort of stayed away for a little while, and then just every now and again I'd just sort of.
I got to say, the world of Pakistani cricket fans, that's not a gutter. That's very nice.
My serious is. You got to get out.
You both, what did you call it? A festering cesspool?
I've always called it a festering cesspool.
So you're not on there. You called it a gutter. Maybe you should just be following the Pakistani...
cricket fans. We're very funny.
Yes,
we make you laugh.
We love things that are funny. And I love cricket like you, and I was very keen to see that you still play cricket. That's fantastic.
There you go.
We're getting a little off topic here.
It is.
Anyway.
But seriously, when it comes to Twitter, it's a gutter. And if you don't like it, and I would say to everyone, get off it, because the stuff that is
What about,
on
would you say that
is
to yourself as well? Just to
look, I'm happy to get off it, seriously.
Okay.
The only reason that I have any interest in it whatsoever is to see what is on it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it is really bad. As someone who is in a position, because I've got to tell you, with a lot of these things, it's not only radicalisation, the stuff, and Twitter, this is something that the E-Safety Commissioner has written to them about, the child pornography.
The sharing of abhorrent material.
It is, it's appalling, and we do need to be a lot firmer with these companies. Which is also illegal. It's illegal. Yeah. And do you know what happened when she wrote to them? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think we get the impression there's a fair bit of bad stuff going on there, but I think, Alastair, you made the fair point as well that, sometimes there's helpful information that can be found there as well. And communities that form and all of that.
It is a vehicle that gets misused, but it's still legitimate. It needs to be protected. Because
is it legitimate?
Okay.
Is it really legitimate?
That we take
control. I think we've got you.
We're talking about Twitter.
I want to move on.
There's a whole lot of other ones as well.
You won't have us back if we keep doing it.